Everyone. Kind of a quick update on the Aerleth campaign. It's my new 5th edition campaign setting that I'm going to be running. It's now, there's a reason I say development is it's now split into 2 different campaigns. I had been planning on running one game on Mondays, and unfortunately that didn't match my daughter's school schedule, and her after school stuff, so we decided to do a Monday game for me and the regular gaming group. That's our regular gaming night, and then a Sunday game for my daughter, and my wife's going to jump in. She's kind of an older school AD&D 3.5 D&D player, and then my nephew, who has played 5th edition, and a couple of my daughter's friends who are one has never played an RPG before, and one has limited exposure to RPGs, but has played tabletop RPGs. So we're looking at high school and middle schoolers, my wife and myself. I'm going to be DMing both. Decided to set them both in the Aerleth campaign setting, which will be interesting. But all right, so this particular video is going to be just kind of an update of kind of a development that I ran into with the startup of the Sunday game, and kind of will lead into kind of how it developed an undeclared part of my campaign setting. The risk with running with younger players, I think a lot of times, is that they very much chase after what seems neat, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think we've all played those characters, and when we all started out, we were more concerned with wow factor than we were concerned with the deeper aspects, the finer points, the refinements of the hobby. And so my wife has decided to make a Goliath Ranger. She loves Rangers, that's her favorite class. And she saw the Goliath and thought she would make something different. She's often played gnomes in the past. It's one of her favorite races. So that was pretty basic, but now I have a Goliath to contend with in the campaign. Now, where things started going kind of weird is my daughter decided that she really wanted to play a Genasi, which are the genie descended, kind of the elemental version of a tiefling. And then her friend also decided that she wanted to play the same, also play a Genasi. So now I've got 2 Genasi in the campaign, a Goliath. And then so my nephew came over today, and he made up his character, and he made a human, which is cool. I think he made a human fighter. Pretty straightforward. And then the last guy to show up is another friend of my daughter's, and he looks to me and he says, "Tell me about these dragon men." So I hadn't read it. So for me, I'm like, oh no, I hadn't written them out. Kind of going back to an earlier video, I hadn't written any of the player races out of the setting. I wanted to have all options available to everybody. Anything out of the core books and the companion book, I was allowing that as well, if they really pressed. I was hoping to keep core books, but Dragonborn are in the core book. So he wants to make a Dragonborn. So I hadn't written them out, but I hadn't really written them in. I had a place they could be from. I had an undeclared section of the campaign map that I could plug things into. So that was kind of a out of left field, and now I've got this oddball party. So that's kind of the first point. I've got an oddball campaign. I've got my other campaign is going to be kind of more straightforward. This one is a mix of some of the stranger races from 5th edition. I've got 2 Genasi, a Goliath, and a Dragonborn, and a human. So I'm gonna have to do some quick figuring out as a DM how these different races are perceived by the campaign setting, down in the vassalry of Aerleth, what and the surrounding region, how are they looked on. So the two Genasi players decided that they are, they're adventuring. They have gone far from home, and the Dragonborn player is a Dragonborn barbarian. So that's going to be interesting to kind of figure out how to translate Dragonborn as barbarians. I mean, it's not too far off, and I'll touch on that kind of at the second point. So yeah, I mean, this is something that can happen when you're running a game. If you have a really wild group of characters, you then have to look at the new dynamic in the game. And not only is it going to be a lot of combat with monsters and encounters, but there's a new social conflict going on. Unless everybody in your campaign world is all buddy-buddy and you just have this huge blended society, and it's just generally not something that you have in fantasy, this is going to create some potential problems. How is an 8-foot tall, giantess from the mountains going to relate to a bunch of feudal lords and baronies and kings and all of that? The common folk will likely look on this as I can go either myth and awe, or fear and danger, or a combination thereof. Genasi are elemental creatures. They look like they have elements to them that resemble the element that they spawn from. And in this case, I've got a fire Genasi, which is she changed to water. I had a water Genasi, and then my daughter decided she couldn't decide, so I pulled out some old school D&D planner knowledge, and we decided to make her a para-elemental Genasi. So she's actually a heat para-elemental Genasi. So we borrowed a little bit from column A and column B from air and fire to make this unique character for her. Because I was trying not to say no. I really didn't want to crush creativity and imagination, especially with the younger players. Because then they're just gonna check out. So Dragonborn, Goliath, two Genasi. That's gonna be quite the eyeful for any community that my parties my Sunday game is gonna come across. Now, that said, that's also a cool opportunity for some role play. Something I'd rather have presented with maybe more experienced players, but this is also an opportunity for maybe me to do some teaching in the hobby, and I'm sure there will be some silliness, and I'm sure mistakes will be made, villages will be burned, whatever. But I do have my wife's character. She's an experienced D&D player, so hopefully she'll be able to kind of voice of reason. And she's a Goliath, so Goliaths are this fair play, survival of the fittest, kind of very grounded, stoic type characters. Overall, it's forming up to be kind of an elemental party too. That's something I can maybe draw from when I'm running the campaign. I've got a fire and kind of this hybrid air, or I've got a water Genasi and a hybrid air fire Genasi. We've got Goliaths who are kind of earthy. They seem to be sort of, from what I can read, what I've read up on them, and as I understand them, they're giant kin, sort of with a connection, from what I can tell, almost to like stone giants. So there is that. And the Dragonborn picked a copper dragon ancestry, so that'll be interesting, to kind of, have this acid spitter running around. But all in all, I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be a challenge for me as a DM, and it should make for some interesting character interaction. So that's kind of the first point, just kind of this weird development of this odd blend of characters. So moving on to the second point, and this draws from the first one, is and it's going to hedge on the Dragonborn character. So I have Dragonborn in my campaign. I have to come to terms with that. I'm not a fan of Dragonborn and Tieflings as regular player races. I know that Tieflings have existed and Dragonborn came in fourth edition, but for me, they're hard to justify as a regular race. Tieflings and Genasi, I've already decided, are kind of those incidental characters and creatures that just exist through some sort of shenanigans between planar parents and mortal parents. So that's easy to write in on a very mythic level. So with Dragonborn, I didn't have any plan. But here's a cool thing: is that this kid who's making the Dragonborn character, I took cues from his choices as choices of his character generation, and went and used that to inform how I was going to insert the Dragonborn in my setting. So my setting is not insanely original. I wasn't shooting for original. I wasn't shooting for something groundbreaking. I wanted a nice, well-rounded, grounded, traditional fantasy setting. And so I had sketched in at the top of my map, which oddly enough in my setting is the warm section, because the main continent that I'm setting up, I decided to sort of flip things upside down by having it be sub-equatorial. So cold is south instead of cold is north, like most campaign settings are drawn up. So along the northern edge of the map, I have the aptly named Dragon Coast. It's a pretty stock name for fantasy, but I wasn't looking for anything groundbreaking. This had been from the beginning in my head where I was going to drop the Dragonborn if somebody decided to play one, and so the Dragon Coast is now populated by Dragonborn. I likely will not call them Dragonborn, and I'm planning on maybe tweaking their origin a bit. But now I have this player who's playing a Dragonborn, and it's a barbarian Dragonborn. So I decided that, okay, what if we have up at the north edge of the map this society, this region that's populated by tribes of like savage, barbaric Dragonborn, and along the lines with that, I might cook up some backstory, but I don't want to say too much because it's just starting the campaign, and I don't necessarily want to tip any hats to anything that I may end up developing later on for actual gameplay. But yeah, so this is an example of where having kind of an open campaign setting and an open mindset as a DM pays off in world development and world building, because a player pretty much filled in a section of the map for me based on his character's background and his class and race selection. If he had gone with anything other than a Dragonborn, I would have probably just I would have just worked that into some other section of the map that's already been touched on. The Genasi are from an area that's sort of off the main central map, but I have it mapped out, so I can point to a place on the map and say, you're from here. All right, glance ahead, fast forward, you're now in this region. And we can kind of fill in how they got there. Same thing with the Dragonborn. The Dragonborn, my map right now is drawn on large kind of medium sketch pad pages, each map being a kind of a region to it, and drawn from the perspective of that region. And in that scale of mapping, the Dragon Coast is 2 full pages to the north from where the rest of the campaign setting is taking place. So the Dragonborn being in the main campaign region is definitely an outsider. The Goliath is from the mountains in the region, but the Dragonborn is from way far offset, I guess you could call it. So he's definitely an outsider. We're not going to likely run into a lot of supporting Dragonborn characters, if at all. And being a barbarian type character, he did pick a bounty hunter background. So I'm assuming that we're looking at a Dragonborn, almost kind of got a Conan vibe off that, where he's come down from his savage origins and has now been living in and amongst the humans for some time, and has been working as a bounty hunter, capitalizing on his dragonborn skills. That's up to the player, but I can kind of riff off of that. But that's where my mind went when he said dragonborn, barbarian, bounty hunter. So we got that going on. So yeah, I don't want to talk that to death. It's not a huge development, but it is an interesting point on how, if you have not filled in all the blanks of your world, it's really kind of simple to not only accommodate off-the-wall characters, but also to help those characters fill in some of the blanks. I have something I can work with. I can actually really, the more I think about it, I can really come up with some cool ideas about what's going on up in the Dragon Coast, and why are the Dragonborn barbarian, and what is going on. And there is an ancient empire in background kind of built into this fantasy setting, like many other fantasy settings have. And so there's all sorts of potential tie-ins and interesting options with that. So it'll be fun to see how that develops through play. And now that it's been said and I've created it, my Sunday game is going to be taking place in the same campaign setting as my Monday game, and simultaneous as far as what the characters are doing. So while I don't expect the two parties to encounter each other, because quite frankly, if everybody showed up, I don't want to DM a group of 8 to 10 people. That would be maddening, especially with experience curve going from rank novice, never looked at an RPG before, all the way to serious lifetime gamers. So yeah, just open mind, listen to your character, listen to your players when they develop their characters, and this can create some cool things, some great stuff for your campaign setting. And it's sort of a bit of a rambly video, so I do apologize. I didn't really have much of a plan or a major point here. I wanted to talk about what's going on with the campaign setup, but also this opportunity. I guess the learning opportunity here is to, as a DM, is to keep your mind and your world open, and work with what your players give you rather than resist it. It has in this case led up to a weird campaign, a weird party mix, but that can be fun. So that's about it for today. Appreciate folks who are watching the videos, and certainly if there are things you'd like to hear me talk about, now that you've kind of heard me talk on some things and have an idea of what I'm about and where I'm coming from, if there are comments you have or things you'd like to hear me talk about, by all means drop them down in the comment section. I'll read them and I'll respond to them. If it is something that you think would make an interesting video and you'd like to see me speak on it, by all means say so, or maybe I'll just do it because I want to, and it's my video channel, and I can do what I want. But yeah, so share the spread the word. I'm not a huge glossy video. I'm not gonna have a lot of nifty gadgets and hoo-has and everything on here. It's just me in my garage, talking gaming and sharing my love of D&D. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.